Welcome to another episode of The Clever Dev. Today what we are going to look at is Material UI Checkboxes. You can see I've got some pretty interesting styling on here. I have custom selected icons, or checked icons I should say, and custom unchecked icons. And these are inside of a form control label, and I have custom color on the label element that gets rendered based on whether or not the particular respective checkbox is selected. And so we'll dive into that. I've also custom sized the font, and we'll dive into these things and really explore the DOM as well to get a good understanding of how to get these stylings just right. Stick around. For this video, I've got quite a bit of code in place already, and I actually right now have total functionality in place, and what we're going to focus on is the styling. So I have some state values and the change handler and so on, and I have this form and paper and form control here. Inside this form control, we've got form label, a form, and so this is the label that was at the top of our checkbox area. Then we've got a form group with 3 form control labels in it. Each one has a control that is a checkbox. And then we've got this form helper text here, which is the bottom label that we saw. And if you want to see how I created the change handlers and the state values, and even go through creating one of these form control labels with checkbox, I actually decided to move that to the end of the video, so it's basically like a flashback to before I'd gotten some of this default code in place. I know that's helpful for some people, but what I'm going to start out with is the styling, because I think that's what the more challenging issue is, and perhaps the more interesting issue as well. So first thing is we're going to change the checkbox color. So what we might do with that is you can use the color prop on the checkboxes. It's limited, however. So what it can accept is things like secondary. It can accept theme values. So let's go take a look at this. It's good to make sure that this is rendering anyway. So I used the color prop on the first one. Most likely, or pretty good chance anyway, you're going to want to add custom values instead. And so if you want to do that, then what you can do is you can actually use the SX prop, or you could create a styled component, or potentially even just use the theme. But for this example, I'm going to use the SX prop. What we're going to want to do is dive into the DOM and see where the color is getting applied. So here we are at the root of our form control label, which contained our checkbox. So label isn't what we want. It looks like the span MUI Checkbox -root is probably what we want. It's probably going to be where the color is applied, and sure enough, I see it down here. So yeah, that looks very promising. Let's take a look at the classes on it. I see this MUI-checked right here, and I bet that's what I'm going to want to target over here. So the first way I'll do it is I'll use this SX prop and directly add in the styling, and I'll say MUI-checked, and let's give it a color value. I will say 80080, and we'll see if that applied some styling. Okay, very good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to move this out. We're going to make all 3 of these checkboxes the same, so I'm going to move this styling out into its own object, and I'll just put it up here, and I'll call it checkbox style. Say that, and we'll go down here and just pop that in here. And I'm actually going to do that on all 3 checkboxes, just so that anything we changes in all 3. This is where you might want to have use a styled component, because if all 3 of our checkboxes are going to be the same, then this is a way to write the code once and reuse it, but even better would be to make a styled component. Then you don't even have to copy this const again and again. So anyway, I've got a great video on that if you wanted to check it out. And actually, it's a good time to mention all the code for this is in the video details, and also I have a link to a brand new MUI course I created on expert level styling of MUI components. But if you've never even used MUI, or you're new to it or whatever, I guess it's not that you've never used it because you're watching this video, but if you're new to it, I do go through an entire app beginning to end, as well as add on the advanced styling. So if you want to learn everything there is about styling, then check that out. Now back to our color. So the next thing that we want to do is, how about we add in some hover styling on these? So I'm going to come up here now. We've got our checkbox style, but I can do my work up here now. And I'm going to say, since this is at the root of the checkbox, it's on that span element, I'm probably safe to just have a colon and say hover. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And let's say box shadow of 3. Now this box shadow, this 3 value, is coming from the default theme. So with every MUI app, there's always access to the default theme or whatever theme is passed in. But if no theme is passed in, then you'll have access to the default theme. So anyway, there's always a question on complex components like form control label, maybe even checkbox. Like, where do we want the hover to be at? But since we're directly putting this on the checkbox, then I don't think I need a space because we're not trying to select a nested element. We just want to see what happens, there we go, when we hover over these checkboxes. So that looks good. Reminder, this is JSS, so it's JavaScript syntax, but we're writing CSS. So all the CSS rules apply, so that would have selected a child for that hover pseudo class. Anyway, so we've got that hover on there. Now, one more thing that I want to do is I want to increase the size of the icon. So let's get to that. Sometimes trickier, but maybe it won't be too bad. I'm looking at this SVG here, and I think we could target that SVG element, but I think I'll target the class on the element, because it looks like a nice MUI class there. So I will say and dot, but this is at the checkbox root. This SVG icon was on an SVG element that is a child, so I'm going to say that it needs that space there. I'm going to put that space there so it's selecting a child somewhere below the root checkbox. Anyway, so let's put in a font size here, and let's just say 2 rem. I believe it was 1.5 rem before I made that change. There we go. So I don't know if you can tell the difference, but it's definitely bigger now. And to confirm, let's go to our SVG and see, there we go. We can see that font size of 2 rem being applied now. So pretty cool. All right. Next thing that I want to do is I want to add in the custom icons for our checkbox. So these are actually icons here. I mean, we can see the SVG over here in the DOM. No reason that we can't change them. And in fact, MUI gives us pretty handy little props for doing that. So I will go down to our checkbox and I will say, I think it is checked icon. And that's of course for our checked icon. And then just icon is for the unchecked. So I like the name for checked icon. Don't like it as much for icon because it's not as descriptive, but here we are. So let's try that and highlight off icon. Try that. And let's see if that worked for the first one. You can do it, VS Code. I believe in you. There we go. So if I uncheck it, then it goes to the other icon that I added in, the other custom icon, this highlight off icon. So pretty cool there. And I will go ahead and add these custom icons to all 3. So super easy. I really like a lot of things about MUI. Now that we've got that in, I think that's all for the checkbox, but we can look at the label that's generated as part of this form control label. So we've got our label text here. Let's just look at the DOM real fast and get a feel for where that is. I see this MUI typography-root. Maybe we can use that class for targeting it. Actually, I like this one better. It's even more specific. MUI form control label -label. Why this has both of these classes on it is because the way that MUI works, kind of a big picture thing here, is every component, in JSS, in the JSX that we write, we're living in MUI world, and we're using MUI components, but really those translate to the DOM as an element with certain classes on it. So this MUI form control label is translating as a span that has all of the styling of an MUI typography component, and I can tell that because it's got this MUI typography root class on it, plus additional styling from this MUI form control label dash label class. So pretty cool there. And let's just go up to this area up here, and I will add in a const up here and just use the same approach. We've got we've got 3 different form control labels. So I may as well just write the code once. And we've got our ampersand, and this form control label, like the literal label that is rendered, was a child of the root of the form control label. It's kind of confusing. Before I add in that styling, I'll show you. So here we are at the form control label, and I am going to add the SX prop to that. Just like this. I'll actually do it down here at the bottom. Just like that. So as a reminder, we looked at the DOM. This is rendering as a form control, and within that, it has the span for the checkbox, and it had the, a span with a MUI typography and the form control label dash label classes on it. So this const here is going to be applied to the root. And so if we want to target one of the elements that's a child, we have to use one of these nested selectors with a space to tell it that it's targeting a child, looking for a child element with this class on it. Anyway, so let's add some styling here. 2 things we're going to do. One will be in here with this, let's say 1.5 rim, get it a larger size. It's not an exact match for the checkboxes, but I've tested it, and this 1.5 will look nice. You can see it looking nice there. But the other thing we need to do is we need to add in conditional styling that detects the state value associated with this checkbox, and add some color over here to our text. Actually, let's look at the DOM just for another moment. So here we can see our font size down here. So that's definitely being applied. We're good to go. Let me add this in the appropriate spots, right here and right here. Now we're going to do something kind of interesting. So the last thing we're going to look at with the styling is I want to get that conditional rendering. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm actually going to use object destructuring to extract the values from this form control label style. And then I will put in the ternary over here, and I will say, let's think about how we do this. We'll want to put in the attribute name, so the CSS attribute of color, and we will say then, I'll say state.react, and this is just a Boolean. So if it's true, then what do we want? Well, we want that color hex in there, hash 800080. Make sure you have 3 zeros here before the second 8. Otherwise, you won't get the intended styling. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, but we'll take a look. And there we go. So color changes based on whether it's selected or not. So let's go down and update these. And it doesn't look like when it's unchecked it's not an exact match, and that's okay. Just for this video, that's okay. In a production environment or business environment or whatever, then I would definitely make sure these 2 match, but we'll leave this for now because I think we got the most interesting things here. So, looks like we have a little bug actually. Always good to check. It's because I forgot to use the appropriate values down here. So let's go check, make sure everything works good. There we go. Let's rewind a little bit and take a look at the click handler and the state values and just the construction of our components. I have all my imports already. They are all from at MUI/material, except for a few icons I'm importing to give those custom icons that we saw in the intro. What I've got going on in our JSX is I have a form, and it is wrapping a paper component. Paper is really just there to give some elevation and centering, and inside of that I have form control as if I was going to use this maybe for like a submit or something like that. with some error states and so on. And inside of that, I have three primary things. First, I have this form label, and it's providing the larger top label that said pick your stack. Next, I have a form group. All that really does is it's like the stack component for forms. It controls the flex direction. And then after that, I have the smaller label at the bottom. It's a form helper text component, and it just had that text custom checkboxes. So inside of the form group is what we really care about. I will have three form control labels, each with a checkbox. I took one out, and the first one, I left the other two from the intro just to speed things up, but I will create the first so that you can learn how to do it, and also I will create the state values that will go in these checked props, and also we'll create this change handler called handle change. But first things first, we got to add in the missing form control label. So what we need here is we need form control label, and it's a component that won't have any children because the props really handle that for us. So arguably the most important prop on here is this control prop. Inside of here we will have our checkbox, and once again a prop with no children. The other important one is the label. These are the two that we'll start out with. So I'm going to call this React. So in theory we have three checkboxes and you're picking your tech stack: React, MUI, and TypeScript. I would check the box for all three of those because this is a TSX file, and of course we're using React and Material UI. So anyway, let's expand this checkbox a little bit more. I'm going to give it a name of React, and the name helps if you're doing a form submission. It helps tie your form values to, if you're not using state, it does. It kind of behind the scenes ties your form values to your submit. Anyway, we'll add a checked equals React, and we need to add that. We need to create that value and add that. And we will add on change, and I will call my change handler handle change. And so far this is actually pretty similar to a great example in the MUI docs, so nothing really special here, but it's important to set the foundation. Really this video is about the styling, and we will get to that shortly. So up here I've got to add my actual handlers and my state const. So first things first, const state and set state equals react.useState. And inside of here, we're just going to have React true and MUI true and TypeScript true. So now we've got those three values. And we need our change handler. And I'm going to include TypeScript in this, so we've got React.change event. HTML input element. And let's go ahead and say that that is the end of that. And I will use a pretty cool little syntax here for our set state. And basically I'm just setting the state to an object, and I'm going to destructure existing state value, this state value right here, and then I will say event.target.name, and here's where that name field is coming in handy, event.target.checked. So that checked field is on those checkboxes, so that's pretty cool. It's just built into them. These are, of course, at the end of the day, HTML elements. So then finally, I will add in the actual consts, React, MUI, TypeScript, and I will extract those from the state value. So that's really all that it takes. So once again, this is pretty cool syntax right here. Just kind of study it for a minute if it didn't make sense, but we're taking the existing state value, extracting the values from it, and then overriding whatever field was just changed, whichever of those checkboxes was just changed. We're figuring that out from the element target's name, and yeah, updating its value with whether it's checked or not. So that's how you add in those handlers there. All right. So if this was good stuff, then I've got a ton more videos on MUI. I've got over 40 videos so far as of making this one. And I've got my website. You can see these two things up here. The Clever Dev is my channel, and my website is called Smart Devpreneur. And so far, I've got well over 100 MUI articles on there. So definitely check out both resources. And I hope you have a great day.